It's official now. 3I Atlas no longer fits inside the traditional comet framework. Everyone listening, pay close attention, because this is where speculation ends and scientific confirmation begins. Recent measurements, observations, and multi-instrument data converge toward a single, unsettling conclusion. 3I Atlas is not a comet. Hubble imagery, readings from the JUICE probe, spectral data, X-ray detections, composition analyses, and even amateur ground-based captures all form a unified dossier, one that dismantles, piece by piece, the long-standing comet interpretation. This isn't theory, it isn't exaggeration, it is a compiled, cross-verified body of evidence demanding immediate reclassification. So let's cut straight through the noise. If you were expecting familiar comet signatures, loose dust, sublimating ice, a dense coma, diffuse jets, prepare yourself, because everything here points in the opposite direction. 3I Atlas displays self-generated energy emissions, a rigid forward jet, an anomalous metallic makeup rich in nickel, extreme optical polarization, acceleration not governed purely by gravity, and a morphology eerily suggestive of engineered structure. Strong words, yes, but science does not bend for comfort. It bends for evidence, and that evidence is now converging unmistakably. So what exactly is new? Images and measurements that overturned the entire model. Within weeks, decisive data sets arrived. The JUICE probe captured the object with its navigation camera during its early November 2025 flyby, registering structural details and energetic patterns that stunned the scientific teams. Shortly after, on November 30th, Hubble released fresh post-perihelion imagery showing a drop-shaped coma and an anti-tail pointing directly toward the sun, a configuration that shouldn't exist under standard comet physics. Researcher Avi Lobo analyzed these images and found that the anti-solar extension aligns exactly with predictions for a swarm of solid bodies separating from a central source at a distance close to 60,000 kilometers. At the same time, ground-based telescopes in Namibia and other regions captured sharply defined jets, including a forward-directed jet with noticeable color variation. Some processed Hubble frames even show an unusual square outline close to the core, likely an artifact, but suspicious enough to raise questions about image handling. Yet even when ignoring any processing uncertainties, the overall observational pattern remains consistent. 3I Atlas is not behaving like any known comet of ice and dust. Now let's go deeper. Physical contradictions that destroy the comet hypothesis. Here are the incompatibilities, each one a fatal flaw, and they only become stronger when considered together. Self-emitted X-ray radiation, a rigid forward jet and an anti-tail facing the sun. Weak coma and faint tail, very little visible debris, anomalous metallic composition, nickel levels far beyond iron in unnatural proportions, strongly negative optical polarization, non-gravitational acceleration without sufficient mass loss, jets without the necessary material output. Rotation behavior inconsistent with a fragile icy nucleus, repeated orbital alignments with Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, and strange brightness shifts and a bluish tint. Jets remaining columnated across millions of kilometers. Energy requirements far beyond what a small icy nucleus could possibly generate. Let's break them down. First, X-ray emission. These X-rays are not reflections of solar radiation. They are self-generated energetic outputs. For a comet to consistently emit X-rays, it would need to release massive amounts of gas interacting with solar wind. Yet 3I Atlas is dry, stable, and shows minimal outgassing. The conditions required for X-ray production simply are not present. Second, composition. Analyses indicate a nickel-to-iron ratio close to 10:1, something far closer to engineered alloys than to volatile-rich, low-metal mixtures of typical comet nuclei. That ratio alone pushes the comet hypothesis into impossibility. Third, morphology. A sharply defined anti-tail, forward-projected jets, and a rigid frontal element do not match the soft, diffusing ejecta of natural comet outflows. Jets from a homogeneous icy body should share color, composition, and dispersion behavior. 3I Atlas exhibits differing tones and heterogeneous emissions, suggesting complex internal structure, not a melting icy core. Fourth, non-gravitational acceleration. Measured velocity changes do not match gravitational predictions. Comets can accelerate through sublimation, but only with large visible mass loss. 3I Atlas shows acceleration without the necessary debris cloud, meaning something else is providing thrust, but we cannot see the mechanism. Fifth, energy output. For jets this narrow, stable, and extended, the required mass flux and pressure would exceed what a small icy nucleus could possibly support. The observed behavior implies energy systems or mechanisms far beyond standard comet physics. And here's the crucial part. A single anomaly can be debated. A dozen cannot. When you combine X-rays, extreme nickel ratios, rigid jets, impossible acceleration, unusual polarization, bizarre photometric behavior, orbital coincidences, and minimal mass loss, the comet explanation collapses. This is why even conservative researchers, those who spent years dismissing extraordinary interpretations, have begun stating publicly that 3I Atlas is not simply a comet. This isn't belief, this isn't hype, this is observation. Now we reach the hypothesis that actually fits the data, the mini-probe scenario. Among the proposed explanations, one stands above the rest for successfully reconciling every anomaly. The idea that 3I Atlas is releasing multiple solid bodies, mini-probes, reflectors, or scout objects from a central structure. Modeling shows that a swarm of small, durable, non-volatile objects released near perihelion would create the exact anti-solar luminous trail seen in images. No sublimation required, no ice jets, just physics. Numerous reflective structures positioned in formation could easily appear from a distance as one long continuous band of light. And this is where the data begins to line up. A coordinated array of reflectors would naturally create the forward-facing anti-tail aimed directly toward the star anchoring our solar system. Smaller, lighter particles behave differently under stellar gravity, which cleanly accounts for the strange, non-gravitational acceleration reported by observers. A swarm of probes and reflective bodies also provides a straightforward explanation for the narrow, column-shaped jets and for the subtle color variations between the different streams of expelled material. And if even a fraction of this substance contains a nickel-heavy metallic alloy, that would immediately clarify the odd spectral features that have been troubling researchers. More importantly, this scenario produces testable predictions, one of the most essential pillars of the scientific method. If the antitail is tied to periodic releases of multiple probes, then its brightness should fluctuate according to the timing of those deployments. Early modeling suggested a sharp decline in visibility around December 19, 2025, corresponding with the final dispatch of material toward Mars, while a renewed brightening near the close pass with Jupiter on March 16, 2026, would strongly reinforce the concept. These are not vague interpretations, these are measurable, falsifiable expectations. Science in motion. Astrophysicist Lo Weibe added another layer to this puzzle. After examining the images and first-round data, he offered an interpretation beautifully aligned with the swarm object hypothesis. He pointed out that the teardrop-shaped coma visible in the post-perihelion images perfectly matches the predicted spacing between 3I Atlas and a cluster of larger detached bodies. This separation, roughly 60,000 kilometers, is the exact length of the antitail captured in the November 30, 2025 Hubble imaging sequence. Lowe also emphasized the early JUICE spacecraft photograph from November 2, 2025, where a faint halo and the suggestion of a dual tail structure were already present. These pictures were taken just before the probe's closest pass by 3I Atlas,
and the JUICE instruments are expected to deliver particle, composition, and spectral readings that could either confirm or decisively rule out the presence of released macroscopic fragments. But before jumping toward extraordinary assumptions, the scientific community has worked through the natural explanations: exomoon, planetary shard, depleted comet. Exomoon. A moon ripped from an exoplanet is theoretically possible, yet for such an object to survive billions of years, acquire its current trajectory, and then generate jet activity of this kind requires conditions bordering on improbable. Its metallic signature and X-ray emissions refuse to align with what a typical exomoon would display. Planetary fragment. A piece of a shattered planet could indeed be metal-rich, but this scenario collapses when confronted with the trio of directed jets, sustained X-ray output, and persistent non-gravitational acceleration, all occurring without any detectable debris cloud. Nothing about this fits comfortably. Extremely exhausted comet, the early favorite. This model fails hardest of all. The near absence of water, barely 4%, the severe polarization, the extraordinary nickel levels, and the energy it appears to radiate by itself push this explanation far outside the boundaries of conventional comet behavior. In short, none of the natural contenders can simultaneously account for the full list of anomalies. And in science, when every standard answer fails, it becomes necessary, responsible even, to entertain hypotheses once considered too unconventional to analyze seriously. So before going deeper, let's clarify the complete picture. These are the 12 primary anomalies linked to 3I Atlas, an array so coherent that taken together they refuse to fit the identity of a natural comet. A retrograde orbit aligned with the ecliptic, an extremely unlikely configuration for an interstellar traveler, which should exhibit wild, randomized inclinations. Jets that aim directly toward the sun, producing a forward antitail that cannot be explained away as a trick of viewing angle. A mass estimate inconsistent with all past interstellar objects, suggesting a body far denser and more compact than a comet nucleus should be. A chain of sequential close encounters with Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, an orbital sequence nearly impossible without an additional guiding influence. A nickel-intense plume with concentrations vastly exceeding those found in typical cometary material. Gas emissions practically devoid of water, roughly 4%, in contrast with common comet chemistry. Extreme negative polarization with rare photometric behavior, unlike anything in the catalog of known natural bodies. A likely origin near the region associated with the famous WOW signal, an eerie coincidence even skeptics find difficult to ignore. A sudden increase in brightness accompanied by a deep blue tone, brighter than the comparison star used in the observations. Jets demanding a solar absorption area far larger than its estimated nucleus, revealing a dramatic energy mismatch. A non-gravitational acceleration implying a massive outflow, around 13% of its total mass, with absolutely no visible cloud to justify such ejection. Strangely stable column-shaped jets extending for millions of kilometers without the distortions expected from a tumbling, uneven nucleus. When taken together, the evidence forms a remarkably strong case that 3I Atlas is not a comet in any classical sense. The combined X-ray emission, metal-rich composition, persistent antitail, anomalous acceleration, and its unwavering structural patterns refuse to fit the standard model. This does not resolve the mystery, far from it, but science does not demand certainty. It demands consistency between theory and observation. And right now, consistency pushes us toward rethinking what 3I Atlas truly is, including the possibility that it contains non-volatile materials and ejects structures that may serve deliberate, functional roles. The wisest path forward remains the scientific one. Continue to observe, compare, test, and refine. The multiprobe hypothesis offers clear predictions for the next orbital transitions. If the measurements match, our understanding will shift from speculation to transformation. What do you make of the evidence so far? Do these readings appear strong enough to treat 3I Atlas as something beyond a simple comet? Share your thoughts in the comments, spread the video, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Every share keeps this investigation moving forward. As we await the next JUICE and Hubble datasets, remember, the story of 3I Atlas is only just beginning, and the upcoming observations may finally confirm that it is not a comet at all.